Okay, here we go, guys. I want to talk about something that's been on my mind lately, and I think it's time that we put it out into the digital realm. As you may have seen on our channel, Ian already put out a couple of solo episodes, so now it's down to me to also put out the thoughts I've been having. And lately, I've been thinking a lot about Bitcoin culture, and I picked up on this in I think it's a 2 or 3 years old interview at this point with Pete Rizzo, where he explained how they basically turned Bitcoin Magazine, think of it what you want, from a news site-ish thing into a culture thing, which also eventually moved later on into things like ordinals and how these NFT marketplaces work and all of these kind of things. He didn't say that in the interview, but it's just the evolution that Bitcoin Magazine went down there. And if you look at it in the Bitcoin media landscape, they are probably one of the biggest, if not the biggest publication. If you add Swan to that mix as well, which I do, because Swan to me has gone away from being just a broker, they're now a miner, they're heavily into media and how to basically represent Bitcoin. And this moves into something that we've seen this weekend where we saw Jack Dorsey repping a Lightning Store shirt. By the way, I'm doing as well. Go check him out. They're having amazing products. And he put it out there for millions of people to see, and it just said Satoshi on it. And everyone, obviously, who works in the Bitcoin industry immediately recognizes it. But for most people, this sort of goes into like, what's this? It might light a spark to Google what Satoshi means. And this is why I want to focus on a bit today, because I think if we're lacking one thing in the Bitcoin community, it's actually having a proper pop culture. And I know people will now roll their eyes going like, what the hell are you talking about? But at the end of the day, a lot of society's motivations, factors why they do certain things are actually driven by pop culture events. That could be stuff like a halftime show at the Super Bowl, a super expensive AR glass by Apple, or just the latest iPhone for whatever reason. But this has moved into what most of the daily lives of people have become. And if you then factor in, that everyone tries to keep up with their friends, everyone sort of has a social life as well. Some have a more intense one than others. You get to a point where people don't really like to talk about things like money, investing, saving for the future, why the financial system is rocked, right? They actually want to move a step further away from that and just think about their everyday lives. Do I still have enough money in the bank account to buy these pair of shoes everyone's talking about? I know, horrible, materialistic, but guess what? That's what most people are out there today like. And they basically want to focus much of their time on these things rather than actually thinking about at what price to get into Bitcoin, if DCA is worth it, what's the difference between custodial, self-custodial, all of these things. And we, as a Bitcoin community, can actually improve and do better. And I was kind of pointing up, but I actually should point down to my shirt. Projects like the Lightning Store, I think, are essential to teach people why there is a Bitcoin culture, because guess what? There is. It's not just the whole maxi debate on social media. It's not just the, ordinals people and the BRC20 people against the long-term savings people. There is actually a lot more underground stuff happening than what you think. And we already see this with these podcasts, right? We also add to this fact. We now pivoted a bit away from just asking rabbit hole stories to basically also take in current events, to discuss things that we see through the Bitcoiner's lens, and then give that point to our audience and say like, hey, what do you guys think? We take in positive and negative feedback. We've seen a couple of those comments lately, and we try to actually show the world, if they discover our channel and our show, that see, there is this Bitcoin thing, and it actually fits into the current events. Probably the best example would be the Tucker Carlson interview. Would a lot of that talk that Putin put up there happen if we would be on a Bitcoin standard? I would say some of it would still happen, because even on a Bitcoin standard, and I'm a big believer, we're not going to get rid of wars immediately. There will be sort of a transition phase to eventually move into a future where it's harder to actually print money for those wars. But I think it will definitely still have some merit that they would, even if everyone would use Bitcoin, have a tool to basically finance wars. So many things that have been said, we can comment. We can also shape culture by discussing current events in everyday lives of people. I mentioned the Super Bowl. We can actually do what you've seen now on Twitter or X or Nostr or whatever, where people go like, every second that the Super Bowl costs that much Bitcoin. That much Bitcoin in the past would have gotten you that much purchasing power. Or if you would have saved that much Bitcoin by now, you would have amount XYZ. We don't like to talk about the price, but guess what? This is what people are interested in. The more of these examples we actually bring in, I'm almost certain that the better Bitcoin adoption will be, and people will actually start noticing it. Stuff like the NFTs as well. It's definitely not my cup of tea, but at the end of the day, if people want to spend their money, their sats, their hard-earned time on these things, and it actually gets them closer to Bitcoin, who are we to judge? So instead of focusing much of our time on telling one narrative, which is, by the way, pretty much in line with what most of the mainstream media does, which we like to criticize, we should open up and start picking up on clues that people have all around us. It could be something as simple as if you're in a coffee shop and someone says, oh, that coffee did get expensive this last year, start explaining maybe, do you know why? Do you think it has something to do with like the amount of money they've been issuing, or do you think it's worth it to buy it with a credit card instead of a debit card, and sort of explain how debit and credit works? Or you can go into something else, like these pop culture events with Jack Dorsey at the Super Bowl, where they say like, hey, he had a Satoshi shirt on. You always talk about this Bitcoin thing. Does this have something to do with it? The more of these events we'll have, I'm almost certain the better will be with Bitcoin adoption. And guess what? It's then fun to bring in Bitcoin into these conversations because people will never see it coming. But I'm rambling again. I don't want to extend this video too much. I'm interested in your thoughts. Do you think we need more of these Bitcoin pop culture events? Do we need to have Bitcoin out there in big advertising agencies and in big billboards? And does it have to take in a place more as a hip, cool thing compared to the old financial system? Or should we stuck to the ways we've been basically preaching Bitcoin up until now? Let me know in the comments below. Also, if you got feedback, if you found this episode horrible and it was just a rant that wasted basically 6 minutes of your life, write it in there as well. And if not, we'll see you for the next episode.